She was never sick. Chapter 23. Nana finally got up about noon. She shuffled into the kitchen holding a thick new book, The Bondwoman's Narrative. I had a hot lunch ready for her and the baby. She didn't want to talk about how she was feeling and didn't eat much, just a few spoonfuls of vegetable soup. I tried to get her over to Dr. Rodman's, but she wasn't having any of it. But she did let me cook the meals for the rest of the day and take care of the kids and clean the house from top to bottom, per her explicit instructions. The next morning I was up before Nana for the second day in a row. It was unheard of in all our years together. While I waited for her to come to the kitchen, I took in the familiar sights. Paid attention, that is. The room is dominated by her old caloric gas stove. It has 4 burners and a large space she uses to hold goods cooling or waiting to be cooked. There are 2 ovens side by side. A large black skillet sits on top of the stove at all times. The refrigerator is also an older model that Nana refuses to give up for a newer one. It's always covered with notes and schedules about our life together. Damon's choir and basketball schedules, Janny's whatever schedule, emergency phone numbers for Samson and me, an appointment card for little Alex's next pediatrician checkup, a post-it on which she has written her latest sage advice: you will never stumble while on your knees. "What are you up to, Alex?" I heard the familiar scuff of her slippers. I turned and saw her standing there, hands on hips, ready for battle, or whatever. "I don't know. The ghost of breakfast past?" "How are you feeling, old woman?" I said. "Talk to me. You okay?" She winked and nodded her tiny head. "I'm just fine." "How about yourself? You okay?" "You look tired. Hard work taking care of this house, isn't it?" she said, and cackled. She liked the sound of it so much that she cackled again. I went across the kitchen and picked her up in my arms. She was so light, less than 100 pounds. "Put me down," she said. "Gently, Alex. I might break." "So, tell me about yesterday. You going to make an appointment with Dr. Rodman?" "Of course you are." "I must have needed a little extra sleep. That's all it was. It happens to the best of us. I listen to my body. Do you?" "Yes, I do," I said. "I'm listening to it now, and it's voicing some serious concern about you. Will you make an appointment with John Rodman, or do I have to make it for you?" "Put me down, Alex. I'm already seeing the doctor later this week. Regular visits, no big thing. Now, how do you want your eggs this morning?" As if to show me how fine she was, Nana said that I should go back to Fort Bragg with Samson and finish up my business there. She insisted. I did need to go to Bragg at least once more, but not before I got Aunt Tia to come and stay with Nana and the kids. Only after I was sure that everything was under control did I set out for North Carolina. On the ride, I told Samson what had happened with Nana and also a blow-by-blow of my day with the kids. "She's 82, Alex," he said, then added, "She'll probably only be with us for another 20 years or so." We both laughed, but I could tell that John was worried about Nana, too. By his own admission, she's been like a mother to him. We finally arrived at Fayetteville, North Carolina, about 5 in the afternoon. We had to see a woman about an alibi that maybe could save Sergeant Cooper. Chapter 24. We drove to the Bragg Boulevard Estates, which was less than half a mile from Fort Bragg. The jets were still flying non-stop overhead, and the artillery kept pounding away. Just about everyone at Boulevard Estates worked on the base and lived in what is known as basic allowance housing. BAH is based on rank and pay grade, the size and quality of the residence improving dramatically with rank. Most of the places we saw were small ranch houses. Several of them looked to need serious maintenance work. I had read somewhere that over 60% of the current Army was married and had children. It seemed that statistic was about right. Samson and I walked up to one of the brick ranch houses, and I knocked on the battered and bent aluminum front door. A woman in a black silk kimono appeared. She was heavyset, attractive. I already knew that her name was Tori Sanders. I could see 4 small children behind her, checking out who was at the door. "Yes? What is it?" she asked. "We're busy. It's feeding time at the zoo." "I'm Detective Cross, and this is Detective Sampson," I told her. "Captain Jacobs told us you're a friend of Ellis Cooper's." She didn't respond. Didn't even blink. "Mrs. Sanders, you called me at my hotel 2 days ago. I figured your house had to be within walking distance of the base if Sergeant Cooper stopped here on the night of the murder. I did a little checking. Found out he was here that night. Can we come in? You don't want us standing out here where all your neighbors can see." Tori Sanders decided to let us in. She opened the door for Sampson and me and ushered us into a small dining area. Then she shooed her kids away. "I don't know why you're here, or what you're talking about," she said. Her arms were crossed tightly in front of her body. She was probably in her late 30s. "We have other options. I'll tell you what we can do, Mrs. Sanders," Sampson spoke up. "We can go out and ask around the neighborhood about you and Sergeant Cooper. We can also involve CID, or you can answer our questions here in the privacy of your home. You do understand that Cooper's going to be executed in a few days." "God damn you, both of you," she said, suddenly raising her voice. "You got all this wrong. As usual, the police have it wrong." "Why don't you straighten us out, then?" Sampson said, softening his tone some. "We're here to listen. That's the truth, Mrs. Sanders." "You want to be straightened out? Well, then here it is. You want it real? I did call you, Detective Cross. That was me. Now here's what I didn't say on the phone. I wasn't cheating on my husband with Sergeant Cooper. My husband asked me to make the call. He's a friend of Ellis's. He happens to believe the man is innocent. So do I. But we have no proof, no evidence that he didn't commit those murders. Ellis was here that night, but it was before he went drinking, and he came to see my husband, not me." I took in what she said, and I believed her. It was hard not to. "Did Sergeant Cooper know you were going to call me?" I asked. She shrugged her shoulders. "I have no idea. You'll have to ask Ellis about that. We were just trying to do the right thing for him. You should do the same. The man is on death row and he's innocent as you or I. He's innocent. Now let me feed my babies." Chapter 25. We were getting nowhere fast, and it was frustrating as hell for both of us, but especially for Sampson. The clock for Ellis Cooper was ticking so loud I could hear it just about every minute of the day. About 9 that night, John and I had dinner at a popular local spot called the Misfits Pub, out in the Strickland Bridge Shopping Center. Supposedly, a lot of non-com personnel from Fort Bragg stopped in there. We were still nosing around for any information we could get. "The more we know, the less we seem to know." Sampson shook his head and sipped his drink. "Something's definitely not right here at Bragg. And I know what you're going to say, Alex. Maybe Cooper is the heart of the problem, especially if he put the Sanderses up to calling you." I nursed my drink and looked around the pub. A bar dominated the room, which was crowded, loud, and smoky. The music alternated between country and soul. Doesn't prove he's guilty, just that he's desperate. It's hard to blame Cooper for trying anything he can, I finally said. He's on death row. He's not stupid, Alex. He's capable of stirring the pot to get our attention, or somebody else's. But he's not capable of murder? Sampson stared into my eyes. I could tell he was getting angry. "No, he's not a murderer. I know him, Alex, just like I know you." "Did Cooper kill in combat?" I asked. Sampson shook his head. "That was war. A lot of our people got killed, too. You know what it's like. You've killed men," he said. "Doesn't make you a murderer, does it?" "I don't know. Does it?" I couldn't help overhearing a man and woman who were sitting next to us at the bar. "Police found poor Vanessa in the woods near I-95. Only disappeared 2 nights ago. Now she's dead. She's gone. Some freaks killed her. Probably army trash," the woman was saying. She had a thick southern accent and sounded angry, but also frightened. I turned and saw a florid-faced, red-headed woman in a bright blue halter top and white slacks. "Sorry, I couldn't help overhearing. What happened?" I asked. "Somebody was murdered outside of town?" "Girl who comes in here sometimes. Vanessa. Somebody shot her," the redhead said, and shook her head back and forth. The man she was with wore a black silk shirt, cowboy hat, and looked like a failed country and western singer. He didn't like it that the woman was talking to me. "My name is Cross. I'm a homicide detective from Washington. My partner and I are working on a case down here." The woman's head shot back. "I don't talk to cops," she said, and turned away. "Mind your own business." I looked at Sampson, then spoke in a lowered voice. "If it's the same killer, he's not being too careful." "Or the same 3 killers," he said. Someone elbowed me hard in the back. I whirled around and saw a heavy-set, well-muscled blond man in a checkered sports shirt and khakis. He had a high and tight, definitely military. "Time you two got the hell out of Dodge," he said. 2 other men stood behind him. 3 of them. They were dressed up in civilian clothes, but they sure looked like Army. "Time you stopped causing trouble. You hear me?" "We're talking here. Don't interrupt us again," Sampson said. "You hear me?" "You're a big load, aren't you? Think you're a real tough guy?" the front man asked. Sampson broke into a slow smile that I'd seen before. "Yeah, I do. He's a tough guy, too." The muscular blonde tried to shove Sampson off his stool. John didn't budge. One of the blonde's buddies came at me. I moved quickly, and he swung and missed. I hit him hard in the gut, and he went down on all 4s. Suddenly, all 3 men were on us. "Your asshole friend's a killer," the blonde yelled. "He killed women." Sampson hit him on the chin, and he sank down on one knee. Unfortunately, these guys didn't stay down once they were hit. Another bruiser joined in, making it 4 against 2. A shrill whistle sounded inside the bar. I whirled around and looked toward the door. The military police had arrived. So had a couple of eager-looking deputies from the Fayetteville police. They all had batons at the ready. I wondered how they'd gotten here so fast. They waded in and arrested everybody involved in the bar fight, including Sampson and me. They weren't interested in who'd started it. Our heads bowed, we were escorted out to a black and white in handcuffs. We were shoved down into a squad car. "First time for everything," Sampson said. Chapter 26. We didn't need this crap, especially not now. We were taken to the Cumberland County Jail in a small blue bus that sat 10. Apparently, there were only a couple of cells at the jail in Fayetteville. At no time were we offered any professional courtesy because we were homicide detectives from Washington, who just happened to be working on behalf of Sergeant Ellis Cooper. In case you're ever looking for it, the booking facility at the county jail is located in the basement. It took about half an hour for the local police to do our paperwork, fingerprint us, and take our photographs. We were given a cold shower, then put in the pumpkin patch. That was the guard's clever way of describing the orange jumpsuit and slippers that prisoners were made to wear. I asked what had happened to the 4 soldiers who'd attacked us, and was told that it was none of my goddamn business, but that they'd been transported to the stockade at Bragg. Sampson and I were put in a misdemeanor block in a dormitory cell, which was also in the basement. It was built for maybe a dozen prisoners, but there were close to 20 of us crowded in there that night. None of the prisoners were white, and I wondered if the county jail had other holding cells, and if they were segregated too. Some of the men seemed to know one another from other nights they had spent here. It was a civil enough group. Nobody wanted to mess with Sampson, or even me. A guard walked by on checks twice an hour. I knew the basic drill. The prisoners were in charge the other 58 minutes an hour. "Cigarette?" a guy to my right asked. He was sitting on the floor with his back up against a pitted concrete wall. "Don't smoke," I said to him. "You're the detective, right?" he asked after a couple of minutes. I nodded and looked at him more closely. I didn't think I'd met him, but it was a small town. We had shown our faces around. By this time, a lot of people in Fayetteville knew who we were. "Strange shit going down," the man said.